This episode of ENVERT TV is being brought to you by the Indie Bible. The Indie Bible offers affordable music promotion for artists of all genres. For 20 years, the Indie Bible has helped independent artists with music promotion, getting radio airplay, distribution, radio promotion, and much more. The Indie Bible features the most comprehensive music business directory with over 1,500 pages, organized into 16 sections sorted by genre and geographic location, featuring radio stations, booking agencies, and more. The Indie Bible will help you to gain worldwide exposure across the US, Canada, UK, Europe, Australia, Asia, and everywhere else, all on a limited budget. To grab the latest edition of the Indie Bible, click the link in our description below.
I'll be there on ice, chilling before they get to own me like a vice. Hear them saying, I knew her before she blew up. I knew her before she blew. Before she blew up. I knew her before she blew. Do you wanna go? Do you wanna go down with me? Don't think of yourself, I've got all that you need. In the backseat, like you told me, in the raw summer heat. Bring your heartbeat and your ketamine and the smell of chlorine. And the smell of chlorine.
Hey, what's up, music lovers? It's Flisadam, the editor-in-chief here at ENVERT, and welcome back to another special episode of ENVERT TV. During this special episode, I had a chance to catch up with multi-instrumentalist, producer, and recording artist BIIANCO. During our conversation, she shares how she's using her music to be an ally to the Black and Brown community, common misconceptions about electronic and dance music, the Me Too movement in the independent music scene, reclaiming gatekeeper roles in production, her creative process, and more. Check out our full conversation here. Cool. Awesome. So first and foremost, I know that you've probably heard this question a lot, but as an artist, and are you still based in Los Angeles?
Yes, I am.
So with that, and I'm in New Jersey, which is not too far where I live from New York City, which was for a long time considered to be the hot spot for COVID, and Los Angeles is in the same regard. How are you feeling? How are you holding up?
I'm doing well, actually. So I have come to realize that this pandemic is an experience that obviously none of us have ever had before, and that things come in waves. Like there's really, really good times, there's really, really bad times, and you just gotta go with how you're feeling that week. It's unprecedented. There's really just nothing that you can do other than like lean on your support system, your friends, your family, like when you're feeling down or something. Like I just feel like just going with what you're feeling that week, just like lean into it because it can change really fast.
Yeah. And leaning into emotions, I know that a lot of people have found themselves in a weird place, including myself, right, of navigating how to feel. What's the standard of living through a pandemic, right? Are we supposed to be upbeat and chipper? Are we supposed to sit in sulk in confusion or sadness or anxiety? So that's important to hear, right? Allowing yourself to feel what it is that you're feeling. I want to talk, and I'll be remiss if I don't. I know fans will chew me up if I don't. Are you playing with any fun sounds right now or testing out any fun equipment?
Yeah, I am actually. So I have I'll show you. I've been really leaning into my Prophet and just like figuring out different sounds and effects that I can do for that. I've been like really leaning into my TC Helicon, which has like a harmonizer in it. And honestly, I'm being spoiled because I'm working with Spitfire Audio, testing out one of their brand new piano patches because pianists. So they asked me to test out their new plugin, which has to do with cinematic piano. So I'm being spoiled on the plugin front in that regard.
Oh my gosh, that must be Awesome.
Super fun. So you're testing it out. I wanted to talk about, and I touched on this in the Put You in the Kitchen video. Electronic music, dance music, and here in New Jersey, we have a subgenre called club music, often gets labeled as shallow or surface music, meaning that there's not much context to it. It's just supposed to be upbeat, dance music or with no sort of message. And you're the complete opposite of that, right? All of your music comes with either some social issue awareness or some genuine conversations that need to be had on a larger scale. So do you have any comments or any thoughts on that sort of like misconception about electronic or dance music?
I think that's a very American misconception, because I feel like Europeans, like, they love their emotional electronic stuff, you know? But I think that some of the most I've ever felt watching a performance has been watching some electronic music live, with the projections and stuff like that. There's just, people don't realize that electronic music is actually highly inspired by classical music, like sweeping strings, drops, like the way that movements happen. And so it just makes sense that it would be more emotional in some ways. I think it has to do with the type of music that you're making though. Like obviously like the uns might not be as emotional as like lots of arpeggios and like beautiful sweeping synth pads and stuff like that. I am just a really emotional person. My emotions are on like 11 all the time. And so my music is going to be emotional no matter what, because it's like a way for me to manage my emotional output, but also it's just everything. I'm trying to like tap into that truer side of that part of my truth every time I'm creating something.
So is that hard to pull from and to then relive, especially when you're doing like live performances, in this case, a lot of stay-at-home performances, to tap back into those feelings that you were once experiencing?
Yeah, it's I often say that like playing live is extremely emotional for me. It's like very overwhelming because it just like, I just feel so much when I'm doing it, you know? I don't know. Playing live, like I relive all those emotions, but also writing can be difficult sometimes especially if you're like really heartbroken or you're digging into something that was just like really emotional. I find myself like crying when I listen to mixes a lot.
And I ask because I don't consider myself to be a creative. I just like to tell the story on behalf of the creators. And some of these topics that you touch on, and I'll mention some of the songs in a second, but to have the emotional bandwidth to record, or to even first start with pen to paper and then to go in the booth multiple times to do layering and mixing and mastering, to really continuously hear that message, it must be super hard. And then to hear fans sing back to you just like, I thought I was over it and now we're diving.
Yeah.
But yeah.
We've even taken it a step further. There's like probably the song on my album that my upcoming full length that I'm always playing live is a song called The Song Formerly Known as Feelings. And my backup dancers have like, we choreographed something that would be almost like full body sign language signaling of like a toxic relationship. Like it's like cradling, pushing away, come back closer, up and down, and then like something horrible happens. And so we have like these dance movements. It's almost like we started doing it before TikTok got big with the dances. It was like we started doing this like a year and a half ago, but it's almost like a TikTok dance that now my fans will do that when they see me live. Like they've learned it through the video and stuff. And it's like, that's especially hard because you're just breaking your own heart every time you do that, you know? It's like movement, singing it, re-listening to it, like everything, fans singing it. It's like everybody's having a collective heartbreak.
So what I also wanted to touch on is some of the ways in which you find inspiration. So you have this new remix that you posted onto your YouTube page, and it was from a clip that went viral for the Los Angeles Police Commission, where they allowed residents to come in and voice their concerns about everything that was going on. So how did you find that clip, and what inspired you to remix it?
So I was very involved with the early Black Lives Matters protests in LA, and I've always just been a very like politically active person when it comes to that stuff. Like my old band and I flew to Standing Rock to support the Standing Rock protests and stuff, and like so that's just something I've always been a part of. But what happened was that was a particularly rough week in Los Angeles, and this person we were watching the police, like the commission, just rolling our eyes at how absolutely ridiculous they were behaving in front of hundreds of callers. Like, we're like, do you guys realize you're on video share? And this one guy called in and just slayed. And so I found him on Instagram. I found the clip too. And I just wanted to make a mockery of how ridiculous it was, but also like give it a vehicle for people to like listen to it and see like how ridiculous the police commission was acting. If you've ever seen the Vic Berger Instagram account, like it was very much inspired by Vic Berger. And also my good friend Tolliver, who I work with a lot, he also made one for another caller. So we were just we were both making Vic Berger videos for that ridiculous call.
Did you receive any pushback from the police commission or the Los Angeles Police Department?
No, I did receive a lot of pushback from some fans and friends and family and whatever that are very Blue Lives Matter. I am all for respecting police officers who do their jobs, but we need them to do their jobs in an appropriate manner.
Yeah. It's hard, I would imagine, as an artist to be as vocal as you have been on several social issues that are considered hot button takes, and kind of do it in a way that it's authentic to you, but then you do receive some comments or direct messages or whatever the case. It could be emails from people that are opposed to your views. How do you handle that?
Listen, I'm white, so I mean, what I'm going through, like trying to like feeling like a cringe at a fan not liking my political views is not anything compared to like what my friends and peers that aren't white are going through as not white people. So that's the least of my concerns, honestly.
There it is, right? There it is. So, I also want to talk about another theme as we start to transition to talk about your music, which I'm excited about. When I first received the email notification that you would be releasing a video, I was like, oh, super dope. I wonder what it's going to look like, right? I wonder if it was something that was pre-recorded prior to the lockdown. And then when I actually had a chance to open the email and watch the video in full, I'm talking about Put You in the Kitchen, I was just like, how did they come up with this? And how creative do you have to be in order to do this with so many restrictions on you? So can you talk about the video storyboarding process for that particular video? And how did the collaboration come about with Chong the Nomad?
So let me start with the collaboration, because we wrote that song like last October and produced it. Like our managers are good friends. They're both from Seattle. And so our managers were both aware of the other artist. And an artist who I have a collaboration dropping with in 1 week, actually a little over a week. She also turned me on to Chong the Nomad. And so when our managers were like, Chong's going to be in Los Angeles in October, you guys should have a session. We're like, hell yeah. So she made all the beats. We sat in this room in my studio. She made all the beats. I made like the track and sang it. And we just like had this like day in the studio where we made that song. As for the video, I basically spent early part of quarantine, like just so in my head with like wild ideas, and I really just brainstormed. I came up with it in my head. I'm Italian. My mother's maiden name, her last name is Bianco, which is now my last name. It's funny, it's actually White, because Ellis Island told them to change it to sound more American when they immigrated. but the original name was Bianco. And so that's my artist name, obviously. And so I'm very in touch with like my Italian roots and my Italian heritage and stuff. And so a lot of like Vatican imagery, like Italian Renaissance imagery, like that video, I was like leaning very heavily into my roots, because what we wanted to convey was like being the underdogs coming up into royalty, like building your own like sense of vibrant royalty that like no one actually saw you coming up, like, and then they're like, oh, I guess they're coming up now. And the funny thing is that like Chong, actually, Alda, she was a chef, like she was a cook, and she was able to quit her job because she got signed. So like that had happened a couple weeks before our session. So that's why we were like, you're like, hear them saying like, I put her in the kitchen. How'd she end up like all the way over there in the music industry? So that like, that we wanted to convey just like this whole sense of royalty, like coming up against the odds.
I want to also touch on the theme in that video, and you spoke about royalty and how to propel yourself despite the circumstances. And oftentimes musicians, I have a great deal of friends that are in EDM and, like I said, club music here in New Jersey. They speak to me, and it breaks my heart when I hear about the direct oppression that they feel as women in the industry. So whether it's being sexually harassed at shows, or being paid less, or being spoken out against their creativity, or trying to be pushed out of opportunities. Have you experienced any like sexism or misogyny in the electronic dance field?
Yeah. Not just, honestly, I think we just need to say in the music industry. In the music industry, I definitely have. The most amount that I have seen in just EDM specific is just the fact that like there just are women are just like far dominated in terms of quantity than men are. There's just like no women in that space. Like I went to a Bob Moses concert once and was like, damn, there's like no women in there's not even any like women in the audience. Like it's just like it's dominated by men. I can't like, now I'm starting to be able to name some artists that are coming up, but they're not household names like Rufus Du Sol or Bonobo. They're like come up kids, you know? So like they're like breaking talent now. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. We're just drastically outnumbered, and that has to do with women being their own producers. In EDM, it's expected that you're producing your own remixes and shit like that. So it's very like, when women don't learn how to produce, how are they going to be in that space, right? In general, the music industry, I like actually posted about this a couple of weeks ago, but like, yeah, I mean, I've been in the music industry a minute, and I've definitely been Me Too'd more times than like gone through Me Too experiences probably more times than I can count, from like people who are too handsy to people who are outright shitty to you when you don't like take up their romantic or sexual advances, to people like who just see you sort of as like a piece of meat, and you're just like desperately trying to be respected. Downright to like people like, I mean, a lot of the Burger Records and Lollipop Records stuff that's going down now, like downright assault and stuff. So yeah, it's rampant. But the conversation is happening now, and so it is changing.
First of all, I want to wish you prayer, strength, and healing. That's nothing anyone should ever have to go through, to be sexually assaulted, to be inappropriately touched, groped, catcalled. Like, these things are not appropriate in any context. And I didn't include this in the questions, but I do want to ask your thoughts on what was happening. You don't have to speak specifically to Burger Records, but there are several musicians, independent musicians that we cover, that it broke our hearts to hear these allegations that are being released, and how for years a lot of these entertainers, recording artists, and producers, mainly women, have kind of in a community spoken about it with each other, but they never were given a platform to talk about it openly, nor have their assaulters been held accountable. So we're seeing that now. So do you have any thoughts on the way the climate is changing?
Yeah, you know, I think it's important to talk about our mistakes. And the biggest mistake I've made in this climate was that, like, years ago, there was one of the biggest Me Too stories. A friend of mine was dating someone who was a screenwriter, very prominent showrunner person, and had said in so many words that person was abusive after their breakup. And like, that person also was responsible for syncing music, including my old band's music, and like creating an income for a lot of their friends and stuff. And I think we all were, a lot of times we talked about it in circles, but not publicly, because we were all really scared, especially when men are the gatekeepers of a lot of sources of revenue. Men are the gatekeepers to a lot of like influential positions or like properties like that. And I mean, it was a very real risk to a very lucrative like revenue stream. So a lot of times we would talk in private circles, but we would shy away from public announcements. And when he finally was Me Too'd, and I was like, oh, thank God, like, yeah, and I was public about him being abusive. It was too late. I had already not shown my allegiance to those people that were abused, because I had known these things, and my proximity to this person had made probably people feel like he was probably safe to be around, even though he wasn't. And like that, I also lost some very dear friends as a result. And these are the things that are important to talk about, because we were, a lot of times women are between a rock and a hard place. Like, we don't control a lot of the big powerful gatekeeping. So then we're like at the mercy of these things in order to make a living off of our craft in like the most competitive industry basically in our country. And so I think that the way that it's changing now is that women are moving into more gatekeeper positions, and we are less afraid. The ball has started rolling. We are less afraid of outing the gatekeepers, because in the past, even in just the past 3 years ago, they could have crushed your career.
Yeah.
And I feel like now that risk is lower. But like, the things that we need to learn from that is, like, I will say that I always think about that and wish I had done something different, but it's been an incredible learning experience to be like, now I know why people stay quiet, despite they should like be publicly like much more vocal about the stories that they hear and stuff. But a lot of times that you're nervous because you're like, are these like substantiated claims? A lot of times it's word of mouth. And listen, I'm a sexual assault survivor, and I will say that like, it's incredibly uncomfortable for victims to talk about the things that they've lived through. So that in and of itself makes the claims feel more unsubstantiated, because you're less likely to have a victim being super overzealous about attaching their name to the story, to the allegations. So it's a delicate subject altogether. But I think the way that it's changing is that there's less fear to be public and vocal about it.
So would you, or do you have any advice for sexual assault survivors in maybe speaking out about things that have happened to them, or taking a stance for those who have witnessed it happening?
For survivors, I want to say that I want to encourage everyone to take care of their mental health at the same time as they crusade for what they know is right and for their truth, because the emotional and psychological ramifications of putting yourself through the ringer like that publicly, like, a lot of times you might think you're prepared, but you're not. Make sure you have your support system there, just to like also take care of your mental well-being and your psychological well-being. But know that you're not alone, and you're going to feel an outpouring of support more than you're going to feel like people attacking you. So you're actually going to find yourself with an even bigger support system when you do feel comfortable doing that. And then for the people who know these stories, like, don't be afraid. The climate is changing. Like, do what's right, because you will always kick yourself not aligning publicly with the people that have been through these things.
Yeah, that's amazing advice. And I think that most times people forget that when you are assaulted, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, there is an innate reaction to withdrawal. So to have that thought process of, listen, you are going to have moments where you may not feel comfortable speaking out. So it's important for you to have a safety net around you of resources in order to really help you during that difficult process. So when I think of stuff like that, I kind of get like super like, yeah. So let's go into something a little lighter. I am very interested in learning more about your creative process. Now, on Instagram, as I hinted to when we first opened, I did see that you posted recently a cover for Kids in America, right, to honor Clueless's, I think it's at this point, 25th anniversary, right?
It's been 25 years of Clueless.
Most of our lives for so long that 25 years, dude, it doesn't even feel like, I know, years. So how do you kind of get your creative juices flowing when you're going into either create original music or cover music like you did with the Kids in America cover?
Honestly, my creative juices never stop flowing. It's kind of a nuisance, to be honest. It's very distracting to maintain a life separate than art sometimes. But I really find inspiration in doing things unexpected and wildly different than, like, if I'm going to do a cover, it's never going to sound like the original. I have a background in film scoring, so a lot of my covers tend to lean towards like very sweeping and epic type takes on these songs, especially a song like Kids in America, where it was done as like an 80s jam or as like a post-punk jam, basically, like the two times it's been released. So in general, like, I try to focus how I'm feeling that day or how I'm writing. Like yesterday, I had a session with a phenomenal artist named Cassie Marin, and I listened to her music before she came over, before we were going to work, and I just like got in the flow of like what I was feeling that day and what I wanted to create and stuff, and then I just execute from in that. I try and like focus my energy a little bit, but when it comes to covers and stuff, I'll just try and do the unexpected.
So let's talk about how you kind of blend your creative flows. Now, you are an artist that's multi-hyphenated, right? So you not only lead with vocals, but you do production, and you also play instruments, right? You're a multi-instrumentalist. So how do you blend those, and how do you kind of control that when you have too much going on, and how do you kind of streamline the process, right? So when do you find pockets to be the producer? How do you find pockets to actually lead and focus on the vocals? And then how do you bring the instruments in?
Well, honestly, they all blend together. It's just a means to an end. I think at the end of the day, I'm a songwriter, you know? So like, luckily for me, I have learned how to produce. So like, producing is such a key element of my songwriting. Singing is such a key element of my songwriting. Playing keys or guitar, all these things are key elements of my songwriting. So I think they're just, I think the way that you look at it is like, I'm creating a song, I'm creating music, and I'm just using different, like avenues to facilitate that, right? They all go very seamlessly now. Like vocals, like the way I produce them, how hot I turn up like the preamp or something before I sing, like, so it totally changes the tone of what I'm singing, like what sounds I pick on my synths, like it totally changes the vibe of the song. So as a producer, like that's like all these choices, like they all kind of go hand in hand. So what I would say is I deconstructed the barriers. Like I've destroyed the barriers between looking at those as separate mediums. They're all just like one now.
That's an interesting approach. And do you do the same for your visuals as well? Because you're an artist that takes a lot of time to really comb through and to articulate what it is that you're envisioning with your visuals, whether it's the music videos or any graphics or motion that you're posting onto social media.
That causes a shift. Like I have to shift the way I think, whether I'm going to be doing visual stuff or I'm going to be doing musical stuff. That's more a time management thing. when you're really heads down in the studio, the literal last thing you want to do is be like thinking about what you look like. But like, honestly, I found like my fans, TikTok fans, whatever, but like Instagram people, like they want to see what I'm doing in the studio. So I'm like, I guess I have to brush my teeth before I go in today, before I start working today. But I'll like, I try to like manage my day where there's a little bit of each, but sometimes I have to just focus solely on a music video or solely on like finishing an album or something like that, because it is two different trains of thought.
Yeah. So let's talk about what you're working on. I'm excited. You opened up saying that you're working on your upcoming album. So do you want to give us any Easter eggs as to what sounds fans can expect, or you hinted at a song coming out soon. So do you want to let us know anything in advance?
Yeah, so I'm actually dropping a new track on August 28th. I'm finishing up my debut mixtape right now. I'm like putting the finishing touches on everything. What they can expect is a lot of collaboration. Like when I went into this as a solo artist, I was like, I want to drop a mixtape like Drake, where I just have a ton of all these artists that I respect so much, like all over it. So I've like collabed with, I have a ton of artists that are in collabs on the record, and like it's gonna be here sooner than you think. So yeah, I have a new single coming out next week that features a collaboration with an artist I really adore, and then one coming out in a month from now, and then probably the mixtape soon after.
So can we get a title of the track, of the project, or do we have to wait?
You have to wait.
Okay. Respect it, right? I think I asked all the questions that I have for you. Let me just take a. So I have two closing questions. Obviously, if there's anything you want to add to the end, feel free, right? So my next question is well, you've kind of answered this already, but will you be doing any virtual performances, or can fans expect any more in-studio performances uploaded to your social media pages?
Let's just say that I am working on something that is in collaboration with a couple like very amazing brands that will blow literally all virtual performances out of the water that we've done so far. So it's gonna be a lot to pull it off, but I think we're gonna do it. It looks like it's gonna happen. So that, yes, there will be more.
I mean, you haven't failed us yet. So I mean, watching your content, I think it's so well thought out and executed that literally whatever you give next to us, I'm excited for. So
thank you.
No problem. So my last question for you is, right now, a lot of independent artists that rely heavily on their art to fund their finances, right? Is there anything fans can be doing now to support you with, whether it's donation pages or downloading music or purchasing music? How can fans support you during this time?
Buy merch, download music off iTunes, like stream it on Spotify, share it. When your favorite artists are releasing things, share the fuck out of it. Like that's super helpful for them. And like when they do live performances, like donate, like that kind of stuff. It's really, but for me, merch and royalties, streaming and like downloads are what's really keeping me afloat at the moment. So
awesome. So thank you again for taking the time to talk to me. I truly appreciate it. I'm so looking forward to this mixtape. You just don't understand. I'm just like ready to like dance like no one is watching me in my house.
Yeah. Well, I hope I know you won't be disappointed.
I'm sure I won't.